300 ICE agents are supposedly going to be in Chicago by the end of this week. But we don't know for sure because there's all kinds of lawsuits. Same thing in Portland. National Guard troops from Texas, California are on their way to Portland, but it's being held up by litigation. But I expect President Trump to win all of this. Joining us now from Florida is a constitutional attorney. Now, this guy has been around. Bruce Fein was general counsel of the FCC under President Reagan, participated in the drafting of articles of impeachment against Nixon and Bill Clinton. Wow. Quite the resume, counselor.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Well, it's okay. I'm telling the truth. We only get the best guests on this program. All right, so am I reading this wrong, that the Trump administration probably will win this in the Supreme Court?
I think right now the jury is out, but let me add a couple of footnotes to your opening observations. The power to utilize the military to enforce the law is not in the Constitution. It's in congressional statutes. Shays' Rebellion actually occurred before the Constitution in 1786, but those are small things. At present, we do know that there's a statute, at least now President Trump has refrained from invoking. It's called the Insurrection Act of 1807. It was urged by some to be utilized with regard to many of the protests that surfaced after George Floyd killing, but President Trump, I think he was concerned that the military wasn't completely supportive of invoking the Insurrection Act that says, in times when there's sufficient chaos and disruption that the enforcement of federal laws is severely compromised, he can utilize the military. It is what's called an exception to the Posse Comitatus Act of 1877, which says ordinarily you can't use the military to enforce civilian law unless Congress by statute creates an exception.
Okay, let me stop you there. Let me push back. So the Shays' Rebellion came under the Articles of Confederation, which were then incorporated into the U.S. Constitution. In 1871, U.S. Grant ordered federal troops to South Carolina without congressional approval to put down a Ku Klux Klan. It was like a war. And the federal troops went in, and it was violent shooting, all kinds of stuff, okay? Then the city of New Orleans and others were taken over by the federal government because they would not ensure public safety. You'll remember that. There were actually law enforcement agents from New York City that were appointed to run the New Orleans Police Department with federal oversight. So you're correct in your interpretation, but there is that clause that there are exceptions to the Posse Comitatus law when the public or federal facilities or people are deemed to be in danger, correct?
Well, I think I'd never like to be disputatious, but I add a little bit of context here. Remember, those invocations by President Grant were during Reconstruction, where there are military governments running all of the South. Reconstruction did not end until at least 1877.
Yeah, but it didn't matter because the South Carolinian authorities had their own elected officials, and they would not deal with the Ku Klux Klan. That's why Grant wrote the order.
Yeah, right. But that was before the Posse Comitatus Act, and
it was 6 years before.
It was based upon Reconstruction law. But I'm just saying, Bill, there's nothing in the express language of the Constitution that addresses this issue. It does say in Article 1, Section 9, that Congress may suspend the writ of habeas corpus and you could impose martial law, so to speak. But that's Congress, not the executive branch. And here, at least at present, Mr. Trump is not Congress to do anything, including
you would say that the Trump lawyers are going to raise the Insurrection Act. That would be the way to go, correct?
If they want to, well, they're
going to have to defend it.
Yes.
They're going to have to.
No, I think that is correct, and say that was contemplated during the George Floyd demonstrations, many of which erupted into violence. But Trump decided, for his own reasons, not to invoke the Insurrection Act. But I underscore the importance in my mind is always process over personalities. That's what the process is. And Congress can expand the instances in which a president can use the military by statute, but it has to amend the law and make it as possible it can be justified. And the law is pretty clear, Bill, that the dividing line between when we have ordinary law enforcement and these extraordinary occasions when the president can intercede is basically when the court system has broken down. We know that courts are there because people do violate the law from time to time. There are massive violations during Prohibition.
Okay, but let me stop you there. Sanctuary cities defy the law.
Yeah.
Chicago and Portland are sanctuary cities. So that, go ahead.
It's more complicated, Bill, for this reason, and I don't want to sound like a lawyer.
No, just shoot it. Go ahead.
This is the U.S. Supreme Court, and it arose with regard to gun control. And the Supreme Court held you cannot coerce state authorities to enforce federal law, right? Immigration law is federal law. It's exclusively entrusted to Congress and the executive in Article 1, Section 8. And the courts have held that you cannot compel a state to assist in immigration enforcement. A state may choose to cooperate, fair enough, right? And the federal government can utilize as many ICE agents they want to enforce federal law. So it's a little bit misleading to say you may disagree with the decision of a state to say we don't want to help enforce the law.
But
remember, help is different than
what was the difference
interfere.
then? What would be the difference then? You can flood the zone with ICE agents, but why not National Guard? It's the same protective apparatus. Look, when the feds took over, you were around. You were around. Wait a minute.
Okay.
You were around when the federal government took over the city of New Orleans Police Department. Okay? Yeah. They did it citing public safety, that the police department in New Orleans, the state of Louisiana, was not able to protect the citizenry. The same law that was used to send the Guard into LA when there were the riots, when the police chief of Los Angeles said, we can't handle this, and we clearly said it, and our people are in danger, bang, the Guard went in, and the courts allowed them to go in, correct?
Yes, and that's correct. And the reason was because the state authorities were saying, we cannot enforce the law.
Just the police chief. The governor wouldn't. The governor repudiated it, and so did the legislature.
He wasn't contradicted. The states weren't. The governor wasn't contradicting that. Here we have a situation which is a little more complex, where the governors are saying we can handle this issue. We don't need assistance, and at least at present, it doesn't appear as though the federal officials being sent in are confined to simply enforcing the immigration laws, which they're entitled to do.
Homeowners, when is the last time you checked on your home title? If your answer is never, then this is for you. Scammers are stealing titles, and your equity is a target. Criminals forge your signature. Just like that, your home title can be transferred out of your name. That's why I partnered up with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Please use my promo code BILL at HometitleLock.com, and you'll get a free title history report. Plus, you will get a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts of any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code BILL. If you have a chief of patrol sending out a message to cops, do not protect ICE agents, as you have in Chicago, that seems to me to be all you need to send in National Guard to protect the ICE agents.
Well, I agree with that. And the National Guard could go in and protect the ICE agents for sure. Just like he can send in the Guard to protect federal buildings, including ICE buildings, if they're attacked. I have no doubt about that. I think some of the litigation, Bill, is because some of the federal interveners are going beyond simply enforcing the immigration laws and protecting ICE agents, although they're doing that as well. But I do not, and if it comes to the U.S. Supreme Court, I have no doubt that with regard to federal officials enforcing federal law, that the Supreme Court will say Trump, under existing statutes, can dispose of the National Guard, the military, to accomplish that function. To the extent there's a dispute, it's whether they can go beyond the federal functions and enforce the law more generally.
Okay, that seems to be logical. But you know, the National Guard isn't making any arrests in D.C. where it's posted, and wouldn't make any arrests in Portland or Chicago. They're there to contain the violence, and the arrests are being made by federal agents primarily. You know that. The Guard hasn't made any arrests. So that would take that issue away from the judges that are trying to stay it.
Well, it's oftentimes the law is very complicated, and lawyers draw lines that maybe are mysterious to lay people. But even if they're not making arrests, the statute says that you can be summoned to protect federal buildings, federal officers in the discharge of federal responsibilities. But it doesn't say, as long as you don't make arrests, you can go ahead and police for other purposes, at least if the state officials don't want it. Now, my view is that the immigration is the chief issue. Why are you going? And if you're asking for an electoral mandate, Trump did get a mandate with regard to immigration, but I don't think he got a mandate for every other law.
Right. Well, immigration, certainly in Chicago, I think that's the property in Portland, Oregon, that'll upset. But I'm going to predict here, Counselor, that the Supreme Court will allow the Guard to go in, and basically about what you said. But I don't know whether they're going to be that specific in spelling out exactly what the Guard can and can't do. That would be unusual for the court to do that. Last word.
No, it wouldn't. I study the court, read a lot of their opinions. No, sometimes they can be very precise. You can go this far, but no further. They don't have to do that. After all, they're the final word, right? But it wouldn't be unique in the annals of Supreme Court.
No, but this is a political court. This is a political court. And I don't know whether it's going to be 6-3 or 5-4. It might be 5-4. But I think they're going to give Trump the authority to do this because they understand that the locals and states are undermining the federal government here. That's how I see it.
And I want to make one thing clear, Bill. I do think it becomes constitutionally suspect for a state to say we're not going to help or protect ICE agents, but others we will protect, because the U.S. Supreme Court has also said you can't single out federal operations for discrimination. Once you have state authorities out there, you can't, insofar as they're discharging their duties, say we'll protect everything except the feds. That doesn't work. The Supreme Court has said it's got to be even-handed if you have the authority at all.
All right. You think I should take the bar exam, Counselor? That was a good discussion. I appreciate your expertise. And we'll have you back after they rule, because they're going to have to rule fast on this. So thank you very much, Counselor. We appreciate it.